guy at work asked if my dad's retirement party was fun. I said, "What party?" He showed me photos. My brother gave a speech. My mom was crying. 40 people were there. No one told me. That night, I walked in and said, "Great party, Dad. Looked like you had the perfect family there." Dad's face went white. Mom started crying. I grabbed my jacket and left. My name's Jim. I'm 34, and I found out my dad had a retirement party through a guy I share a printer with at work. Let that sink in for a second. Not a phone call, not a text, not even one of those mass emails that go to your spam folder. A coworker named Derek who I sometimes nod at in the hallway. That's how I found out my own family through a party and decided I wasn't worth inviting. But I'm getting ahead of myself. Let me back up. I grew up in Clarksville, Tennessee, middle of 3 kids. My older brother Scott is 37, my younger sister Paige is 29, and then there's me, the middle child, which I know is already making some of you nod like you understand everything. And honestly, you probably do. Growing up as the middle kid in my family was like being the second coat of paint on a wall. Technically there, technically serving a purpose, but nobody's ever going to look at it and say, "Wow, that second coat really made the difference." My dad, Roger, worked for the same manufacturing company for 36 years. Started on the floor, worked his way up to operations manager, retired as a regional director. The man bled company colors. Every dinner conversation growing up was about production quotas and supply chain logistics, which is exactly as thrilling as it sounds when you're 11 and just want to talk about whether the Titans are going to make the playoffs. My mom, Diane, was a homemaker who ran the house like a small government. She had spreadsheets for grocery shopping. Literal spreadsheets. Color-coded. Now here's the thing about my family. It wasn't like I was abused or neglected in some dramatic, made-for-TV way. It was subtler than that. Scott was the firstborn, the golden child, the one who played quarterback and got a business degree and went into finance and made my parents' chests puff out at every family gathering. Paige was the baby, the miracle child who came 5 years after me when my parents thought they were done, and she got babied so hard she still gets her oil changed at my dad's preferred mechanic because he set up an account for her. She's 29. And me? I was fine. That was the word they always used. Jim's fine. Jim doesn't need much. Jim's easy. I got decent grades, played baseball, went to community college, became an electrician, and built a quiet, steady life for myself. I wasn't flashy. I wasn't dramatic. I didn't demand attention. And somewhere along the way, my family decided that because I never demanded it, I must not want it. I want to be clear about something. I'm not sitting here pretending I was some tortured soul growing up. I had a roof. I had food. I had parents who showed up to most of my games. Most. But there were patterns, and once you start seeing them, you can't unsee them. Scott's college graduation was a 3-day event. Mine from trade school got a card and a dinner at Applebee's that my mom spent the whole time talking about Scott's new apartment in Nashville. Paige's first apartment got furnished by my parents. When I got my first place at 22, my dad helped me move one couch and then said he had to get back because he was grilling steaks for Scott's birthday that weekend. My birthday had been 2 days before. We'd celebrated it with a phone call. Again, none of this was cruel. It was just consistent. Like water dripping on a stone. You don't notice the erosion until one day you realize there's a hole where something solid used to be. I settled into adulthood about 20 minutes from my parents' house. Close enough to be available, far enough to have my own life. I'd go to Sunday dinners when I could, help my dad with yard work, fix wiring at their house for free because that's what you do when you're the family electrician. I was the guy they called when something broke. And I showed up every time because I kept thinking that if I just kept showing up, eventually they'd start showing up for me too. My girlfriend Leah and I had been together about 2 years at this point. She was the first person who ever looked at my family from the outside and said something. We'd gone to Thanksgiving the year before, and on the drive home, she was quiet for a long time before she said, "Jim, do you notice that your mom asked Scott about his promotion 4 times, but didn't ask you a single question about the commercial project you just finished?" I told her it was just how they were. She said that was exactly the problem. Leah's a middle school teacher. Patient, kind, and absolutely ruthless when she thinks someone's being treated unfairly. She started pointing things out gently at first, then less gently. The way my mom would text the family group chat about Scott's kids' soccer games, but not mention that I'd just been promoted to lead electrician at my company. The way my dad would call me for help with things, but never call just to talk. The way Paige would invite Scott and his wife to everything, but only think of me when she needed someone to help her move furniture. I told Leah she was reading too much into it. She told me I wasn't reading enough into it. She was right. I just wasn't ready to hear it yet. So that brings us to a Thursday in March. I was at work, doing paperwork in the break room, minding my own business, eating a turkey sandwich that I'd honestly been looking forward to all morning because I'd put the good mustard on it. Derek from accounts walked in, poured himself some coffee, and said something that rearranged my entire understanding of my family. "Hey Jim, how was your dad's retirement party? Looked like a great time." I put my sandwich down. "What party?" Derek kind of laughed, like I was joking. "The retirement party? Saturday night. My wife's friend Connie was there. She posted a bunch of photos. Your brother gave a speech. It looked really nice." I sat there for a second, and I could feel something shifting in my chest. Not anger. Not yet. Just this cold, hollow confusion, like when you miss a step going downstairs and for a split second you're not sure if you're falling or standing. "I didn't know about it," I said. Derek's face changed. He realized this wasn't a joke. "Oh, man, I'm sorry. I just assumed you were there. There were a lot of people." "How many people?" He pulled out his phone, scrolled for a second, and turned it toward me. There it was. A banquet room at one of the nicer restaurants in town. Streamers, a banner that said, "Happy Retirement Roger," tables set with real napkins, a cake that had to have cost at least $150. And people. So many people. I could see my mom in one photo, dabbing her eyes with a napkin. Scott was at a podium in another, clearly mid-speech. Paige was in the background of a third, laughing with her arm around someone I didn't recognize. My dad was in the center of it all, beaming, surrounded by family and friends and co-workers and neighbors. 40 people, maybe more, and not a single one of them was me. I handed Derek his phone back. "Thanks," I said. I don't know what my face looked like, but Derek didn't say another word. He just took his coffee and left. I sat there for a long time. The turkey sandwich didn't get finished. The good mustard didn't matter anymore. I just sat there, staring at the table, trying to figure out how you throw a 40-person party for your father's retirement and forget to invite one of your 3 kids. And the answer that kept coming back, the one I'd been dodging my whole life, was simple. You don't forget. You just don't think of them. Because to forget someone, they have to be on your mind in the first place. I drove home that night on autopilot. I don't even remember the route I took, which is a little concerning considering I drive a truck full of electrical equipment, but my brain was somewhere else entirely. It was replaying every Sunday dinner, every holiday, every time I'd shown up with a six-pack and a smile thinking I was part of something. I kept seeing that photo of my mom crying. Happy tears. Proud tears. For a party that apparently everyone in her life was welcome at except me. Leah was grading papers when I walked in. She took one look at my face and set her pen down. "What happened?" I told her everything. Showed her the photos that Derek had texted me after I asked him to. I watched her scroll through them slowly, and I watched her jaw tighten more with each one. Leah doesn't get loud when she's angry. She gets quiet and precise, like a surgeon figuring out where to cut. "Jim, there are 40 people in these pictures." "I know. Your cousin Rachel is here. Your Uncle Greg is here. Your dad's neighbor from 2 houses down is here. I know. And nobody thought to call you." "I know, Leah." She put the phone down and looked at me with this expression that was half heartbreak, half fury. "What do you want to do?" That was the question. What do you do when the thing you always suspected but never wanted to confirm gets confirmed in high definition, full color, posted on social media clarity? Part of me wanted to pretend I never saw those photos. Part of me wanted to call my mom and scream. Part of me wanted to drive over there right then and ask my dad to his face why I wasn't worth a text message. Instead, I did something I hadn't planned. I said, "I'm going over there." Leah stood up. "I'm coming with you." "No, I need to do this alone." She looked like she wanted to argue, but she didn't. She just squeezed my hand and said, "Don't let them make you small." The drive to my parents' house took 11 minutes. I know because I watched the clock the whole way. 11 minutes to drive to the house where I grew up, where my height was marked on the doorframe of the kitchen, where I learned to throw a baseball in the backyard, where I apparently didn't matter enough to be told about a retirement party. I pulled into the driveway. Both cars were there. The porch light was on. I could see through the front window that the TV was going in the living room. Just a normal Thursday night for Roger and Diane. Just an ordinary evening in a house where they had 2 kids and a guy who fixed their outlets. I didn't knock. I never knock. I just walked in like I always do, because that's what family does. My parents were in the living room. Dad was in his recliner. Mom was on the couch with a blanket over her legs, some home renovation show playing on the screen. They both looked up when I came in, and I could tell they were surprised to see me on a weeknight, but not worried. Why would they be worried? In their minds, nothing was wrong. "Hey, bud," my dad said. "What brings you by?" I stood there in the doorway of the living room, still in my work boots, still smelling like copper wire and insulation, and I said it. Simple. Calm. Like I was commenting on the weather. "Great party, Dad. Looked like you had the perfect family there." The silence that followed was the loudest thing I've ever heard in that house. My dad's face went from relaxed to confused to pale in about 2 seconds. My mom sat up straight, and the blanket slid off her legs. Her mouth opened, but nothing came out. "Jim," my dad started. 40 people, Dad. Derek from my office showed me the pictures. Scott gave a speech. Mom was crying. The whole family was there. Cousins, neighbors, Uncle Greg, everyone. 40 people knew about your retirement party. And I found out from a guy I share a printer with. My mom's eyes started filling up. "Jim, honey, it wasn't like that." "Then what was it like, Mom?" "Because from where I'm standing, it looks like you threw a party for the whole family and just didn't tell me. So either you forgot I exist, or you didn't want me there. And honestly, I'm not sure which one is worse." My dad leaned forward in his recliner. "Now hold on, son. Scott organized the whole thing. We didn't handle the invitations. If anyone dropped the ball, it was him. And there it was. The deflection. The redirect. Classic Roger. Something goes wrong that involves me, and suddenly it's someone else's department. I could have predicted that response with my eyes closed. "So you're telling me," I said, "that Scott planned a party for your retirement, and at no point during the planning, the setup, the actual event, or the days afterward, you didn't notice that one of your 3 children wasn't there? You didn't look around that room full of 40 people and think, where's Jim?" My dad's mouth opened and closed. My mom was fully crying now, quiet tears rolling down her cheeks, and I hated that it was happening, but I also couldn't stop. Because this wasn't just about the party. The party was just the thing that finally cracked the seal. "Do you know how many times I've driven out here to fix something in this house?" I said. "I rewired your garage. I installed your ceiling fans. I put in that new panel in the basement that would have cost you $3,000 if you'd hired someone. I've been here every time something breaks, every time something needs doing, every time you needed the son who's handy. But you couldn't put my name on an invitation." "Jim, please sit down," my mom said. "Let's talk about this." "I don't want to sit down, Mom. I've been sitting down my whole life. I've been sitting quietly in the background while Scott gets the speeches and Paige gets the attention, and I get called when the dishwasher leaks. I'm done sitting down." My dad's face had gone from white to red. Not angry red. Ashamed red. At least I think it was shame. With my dad, it's hard to tell, because the man has expressed maybe 4 emotions in his entire life, and 2 of them were about football. "You're blowing this out of proportion," he said. And he said it in that voice. That calm, dismissive, I'm the reasonable one voice that he'd used on me my entire life. The voice that said I was overreacting. The voice that said my feelings were too big for the situation. The voice that had slowly, steadily taught me to make myself smaller so I'd fit into the space they'd left for me. "Out of proportion," I repeated. "Your son found out about your retirement party from a stranger, and I'm blowing it out of proportion." My mom reached for me. "Jim, honey, we love you. You know that." "Do I?" I said, and I wasn't being dramatic. I was genuinely asking. Because love is supposed to mean you think about someone. Love is supposed to mean you include them. Love is supposed to mean that when you're standing in a room full of 40 people celebrating one of the biggest milestones of your life, you notice that your kid isn't there. Love isn't just a word you say when someone finally gets upset enough to confront you about being invisible. I looked at both of them. My mom crying. My dad gripping the arms of his recliner like it was the only thing keeping him in the room. And I felt something I'd never felt before in that house. Clarity. Complete, cold, unshakable clarity. I grabbed my jacket off the hook by the door. The same hook I'd been hanging my jacket on since I was tall enough to reach it. "Great party, Dad," I said again. "Glad you had the perfect family there." And I left. I drove home with the windows down even though it was cold, because I needed the air. I needed something real hitting my face. When I got back, Leah was sitting on the couch waiting for me. She didn't ask what happened. She just looked at my face and opened her arms, and I sat down next to her, and didn't say anything for a long time. That night, lying in bed, staring at the ceiling, I made a decision. I was done being the son who was fine. I was done being easy. I was done showing up for people who couldn't be bothered to send me a text. Something in me had broken, but for the first time, I realized that maybe it was something that needed to break. The next few days were rough, I'm not going to lie. When you rip a bandage off a wound you've been covering for 34 years, it doesn't feel liberating at first. It just feels raw. I went to work, I came home, I ate dinner with Leah, and I tried not to think about the 40-person party that apparently wasn't important enough to include me in. My phone started lighting up the morning after my visit. First it was my mom. 3 texts in a row. Jim, please call me. We need to talk about this. I love you so much, you have to know that. Then my dad called and left a voicemail that I listened to once and then deleted. It was 30 seconds of him clearing his throat and then saying, Jim, your mother's upset. Give her a call when you get a chance. Not, I'm upset. Not, I'm sorry. Your mother's upset. Like I was a maintenance issue he was delegating. Then Scott called. That one I almost answered, because I wanted to hear what the golden child had to say for himself. But I let it go to voicemail. His message was something else. Hey Jim, Mom told me you're upset about the party. Look, man, I organized the whole thing in like 2 weeks. It was chaos. I must have just missed sending you the details. It wasn't intentional. Don't make this a bigger thing than it needs to be. Call me back. Must have just missed sending me the details. Like I was a vendor who didn't get a purchase order. Like my name just slipped through the cracks of a spreadsheet. My own brother, who had enough organizational capacity to rent a banquet room, order a custom cake, coordinate 40 guests, and prepare a speech, couldn't find the time to text his brother. And his apology, if you could even call it that, came with a side order of, don't be dramatic about it. I didn't call any of them back. Not out of spite, not to punish them, but because I genuinely didn't know what to say. For the first time in my life, I didn't have a script for how to be the easy one. I didn't know how to smooth this over, and more importantly, I didn't want to. Leah was amazing through this. She didn't push me to talk when I didn't want to, and she didn't hold back when I did. One night I was sitting on the porch, and she came out with 2 beers and sat down next to me and said, You know this isn't just about a party, right? Yeah, I said. I know. It's about 34 years of being an afterthought. That's a pretty clean summary. She took a sip of her beer. So what's the plan? I didn't have one yet. But that conversation started something. See, I'd spent my whole life being reactive. Waiting for my family to include me. Waiting for them to notice me. Waiting for crumbs of attention, and then being grateful when they fell. I'd never once been proactive about what I wanted or what I deserved. It was time to change that. The first thing I did was stop initiating contact. I didn't block anyone, didn't make any announcements, didn't post anything cryptic on social media. I just stopped being the one who reached out. No more Sunday calls to my mom. No more texts to my dad asking if he needed help with anything. No more checking in on Paige. I wanted to see how long it would take for any of them to notice the silence without me filling it. The second thing I did was pour myself into my work. My boss, a guy named Qley who'd been in the trade for 25 years, had been telling me for a while that I had the skills to go out on my own. I'd always brushed it off because starting your own business felt like something other people did. Confident people. People who got speeches at parties. But something about being excluded from my dad's retirement made me think about my own future differently. If my family wasn't going to invest in me, I was going to invest in myself. I started studying for my master electrician's license. I already had my journeyman's, but the masters would let me pull permits, bid on commercial jobs, and eventually open my own shop. I studied at the kitchen table every night after work. Leah would grade papers on one side. I'd have my code books open on the other. She'd quiz me on load calculations while we ate dinner. It sounds boring, and honestly a lot of it was, but it also felt like the first time in years that I was building something for myself instead of fixing something for someone else. I passed the exam on my first try. Leah made a cake. She invited our friends over. Her parents sent flowers. My friend Travis, who I'd known since middle school, showed up with a bottle of whiskey and a card that said about dang time. It was a small celebration, maybe 10 people, and it was the happiest I'd felt in months. Because every single person in that room was there because they wanted to be. Meanwhile, the silence from my family was telling. After the initial burst of texts and calls, which lasted about a week, the contact dropped off almost entirely. My mom texted me once more, a photo of a casserole she'd made with the caption, Wish you were here for dinner. No acknowledgement of what happened. No apology. Just a casserole and a guilt trip dressed up as warmth. I didn't respond. Scott never reached out again after that one voicemail. Not once. Paige sent me a meme about 2 weeks later, completely unrelated to anything, like nothing had happened. I stared at it for a while, trying to decide if she even knew about the party situation, and then I realized it didn't matter. Because Paige not knowing would mean my parents didn't even think to mention it, and Paige knowing would mean she knew and didn't care. Both options were lousy. 3 months went by. In that time, I got my master's license, started picking up side jobs on weekends, and opened a business bank account. Cole helped me set up with a few commercial contacts he had. Leah helped me build a simple website. Travis, who did HVAC work, started referring clients my way. Slowly, carefully, I was building something real. A business, a reputation, a life that didn't revolve around waiting for my family to see me. I also started seeing a therapist. Leah suggested it, and I resisted at first because I had that stupid voice in the back of my head that sounded a lot like my dad saying I was blowing things out of proportion. But I went, and it was one of the best decisions I've ever made. My therapist, a no-nonsense woman named Dr. Reeves, helped me understand something I'd been circling around for years. My family hadn't rejected me. They'd just never fully seen me. And the difference between those two things might sound small, but it changes everything about how you respond. Rejection means someone considered you and said no. Being unseen means they never considered you in the first place. And you can't fix unseen by trying harder. You can only fix it by stepping into a space where people actually look. By summer, my side business was pulling in enough that I started thinking about leaving my full-time job. I had 3 commercial contracts lined up, a growing list of residential clients, and more work than I could handle alone. I was starting to think about hiring someone. Me. The kid who got a card and an Applebee's dinner for graduating trade school was about to become someone's employer. Leah and I were sitting on the porch one evening, watching the fireflies, and she said, "Your family has no idea who you are right now." I thought about that. She was right. They had no idea about the license, the business, the contracts, any of it, because they hadn't asked. In 3 months of silence, not one of them had asked me what was new. Good, I said. Let them find out when it matters. I didn't know yet what that meant, but I had a feeling I was about to find out. 6 months after the party I wasn't invited to, life handed me the kind of opportunity that only shows up when you've been putting in the work and the universe decides to finally pay attention. One of Cole's old contacts, a property developer named Grant, was building a mixed-use complex on the east side of town. 12 units of residential on top, commercial space on the ground floor. The whole building needed to be wired from the ground up. It was a big job, 6 figures big, the kind of contract that could take a one-man operation and turn it into a legitimate company. Grant had been working with another electrical contractor, but they'd fallen behind schedule and botched a panel installation badly enough that the inspector flagged the whole project. He needed someone who could come in, fix the mess, and finish the job on a tight timeline. Cole gave him my number. I met Grant at the job site on a Wednesday morning. Tall guy, firm handshake, zero patience for small talk. He walked me through the building, showed me the problems, and laid out his timeline. I need this done in 8 weeks. The last guys told me 12 and missed that by a month. I looked at the scope of work, ran some numbers in my head, and said yes. But I told him I'd need to bring on 2 guys to help, and I needed authority to order materials directly instead of going through his purchasing department, which had been part of the delay with the last crew. He agreed on the spot. We shook hands in a half-finished hallway that smelled like drywall dust and possibility. I hired Travis's nephew Adam, who'd just gotten his apprentice license, and a guy named Bryce who I'd worked with at my old company. Good guys, hard workers, and most importantly, guys who showed up when they said they would. We started the following Monday. For the next 7 weeks, I worked harder than I ever have in my life. 14-hour days, weekends, early mornings where I was on site before the sun came up, and still going over plans at the kitchen table after dinner. Leah barely saw me, but she never complained. She'd leave coffee in a thermos by the door every morning and text me things like, "You're going to crush it," and once, memorably, "If you don't eat lunch today, I'm going to call your mother." That one actually made me laugh, which was impressive given the circumstances. We finished the job in 7 weeks and 2 days. Under budget. The inspector signed off on everything without a single flag. Grant called me into his office trailer afterward and said, "Jim, I've been in this business for 20 years, and I can count on one hand the contractors who've delivered like you just did." Then he handed me a check and told me he had 2 more projects coming up in the fall and wanted me on both of them. I sat in my truck after that meeting and just stared at the check. It was more money than I'd made in a year at my old job, and I'd earned it. Not because someone gave me an opportunity out of pity or family obligation, because I'd showed up, done the work, and been too stubborn to quit. I called Leah and told her, and she screamed so loud I had to hold the phone away from my ear. Then she said we were going out to dinner, and we did, and it was the best steak I've ever had, partly because of the restaurant and partly because of what it represented. Now here's where the story takes a turn, because life has a sense of timing that no fiction writer could match. About a week after I finished Grant's project, I got a call from Paige. This was notable because Paige hadn't called me in over 4 months. She'd sent a few more memes that I hadn't responded to, and then even those stopped. So hearing her name on my phone was unexpected. "Jim, hey," she said, in that bright, casual voice she uses when she wants something. I know that voice. It's the same voice she used when she needed me to help her move, help her assemble furniture, help her set up her Wi-Fi router. It's the voice of someone who only remembers you exist when they need your hands. "Hey, Paige. So listen, I'm sure you've heard, but Mom and Dad are doing their 40-year anniversary party next month. The whole family's pitching in for this big thing at the lake house. Scott's handling the catering. I'm doing decorations, and we were thinking you could handle the sound system and the lighting for the outdoor area. You know, since that's kind of your thing." I let that sit for a second. The audacity of it was almost beautiful, almost artistic. They were throwing another party, another big family event. And once again, my role wasn't guest. It wasn't family member. It was electrician. They didn't call me to celebrate with them. They called me to set up the lights. "Who's invited?" I asked. "Everyone. It's going to be huge. Mom's been planning it for weeks. Like 60 people. And at what point were you going to tell me about it? Or was this the invitation?" There was a pause. A long one. "Jim, come on. Don't start with that again. We're past that." "We're past it? When did we get past it, Paige?" "Because I don't remember having a conversation about it. I don't remember an apology. I don't remember anyone in this family acknowledging that they threw Dad's retirement party without me. It was a miscommunication. It was a choice. And now you're making another one. You're calling me to work the event, not to attend it." Another pause. "That's not fair." "You're right, it's not. None of this has been fair." I told her I'd think about it, and hung up. But I wasn't thinking about whether to set up their sound system. I was thinking about something else entirely. Because a 40-year anniversary party with 60 people was exactly the kind of stage I needed. I called Leah. "How do you feel about going to a party at the lake house next month?" "Your parents' anniversary?" "Yeah. I thought you weren't talking to them." "I'm not. But I think it's time I showed up. Not as the electrician. Not as the invisible middle child. As me." Leah was quiet for a moment. "What are you planning?" "Nothing dramatic. I'm not going to make a scene. I just want to be there, as a guest, looking like exactly what I am. Someone who doesn't need them. Someone who built his own life while they weren't watching. I want to walk in there with you, looking good, feeling good, and let them see what they missed." "That," Leah said, "is the most attractive thing you've ever said to me." I called Paige back the next day. Told her I wouldn't be handling the sound or the lighting, but I'd be there as a guest. She seemed confused by the distinction, which told me everything I needed to know about how my family saw me. I told her I'd be bringing Leah. She said fine, sounding a little uncertain, like she could tell something had shifted but couldn't quite figure out what. Over the next few weeks, I got ready. Not in a revenge montage kind of way, but in a quiet, deliberate way. I bought a nice outfit. I got a haircut. Leah and I talked about what the evening might look like, what might happen, what I might want to say if the moment came. My therapist and I spent 2 sessions on it. Dr. Reeves helped me understand that this wasn't about punishing my family. It was about showing up as my full self in a space where I'd always made myself smaller. "You're not going there to hurt them," she said. "You're going there to stop hurting yourself." The night before the party, Leah and I were lying in bed, and she turned to me and said, "Whatever happens tomorrow, I want you to know that I see you. I've always seen you." I squeezed her hand and said, "I know. That's why I'm ready." The drive to the lake house the next evening took about 45 minutes. I drove slowly. Leah sat in the passenger seat in a blue dress that made her look like she belonged on a magazine cover. The sun was going down over the water when we pulled up, and I could see the lights strung up along the deck. the tables set along the lawn, the people already gathering. Someone else had handled the lighting. It didn't look as good as mine would have, but I kept that to myself. I parked the truck, turned off the engine, and looked at the house where my family was celebrating another milestone without expecting me to be anything more than the help. Then I opened the door and stepped out. It was time to stop being invisible. The first person who saw us was my Aunt Linda, standing near the drink table with a glass of wine and genuine surprise on her face. "Jim, I didn't know you were coming." She said it with such honest excitement that I knew she hadn't been part of the problem. Some people in my family just assumed I'd been invited because why wouldn't I be? Leah and I walked through the crowd, and I could feel the shift in real time. People were noticing us, not because we were making a scene, but because I was there, looking present, looking like someone who hadn't come to set up speakers. My cousin Rachel hugged me and said I looked different. "Good different," she added. I told her it was something like that. The party was beautiful, I'll give them that. The lake house looked great. The food was catered from a barbecue place I'd actually recommended to Scott years ago, and the weather had cooperated perfectly. My parents were holding court near the center of everything, greeting guests, being the happy couple celebrating 40 years. My dad was in a sport coat he kept tugging at because the man has never been comfortable in anything dressier than a flannel. They hadn't seen me yet. I didn't rush it. It was about 20 minutes in when my mom spotted me. She was mid-conversation with someone, and her eyes drifted past them and landed on me, and I watched her face go through about 4 emotions in 2 seconds. Surprise, confusion, hope, and then something that looked a lot like guilt. She excused herself and came over, walking fast, arms already reaching. "Jim, you came." "I came," I said. I let her hug me, but I didn't melt into it the way I used to. I stood there and let it happen, and then I gently stepped back. She looked at Leah, then back at me. "I'm so glad you're here. I was afraid you wouldn't come." "Were you, Mom?" "Because Paige called me to set up the sound system. That's how I found out about it." Her face crumpled slightly, but she recovered. "That's not. I told her to invite you." "You told her to invite me to work the event. There's a difference. But I'm not here to argue about that tonight. This is your anniversary. I'm here as your son." She nodded, blinking fast, and squeezed my arm before someone else pulled her away. I watched her go and felt Leah's hand slip into mine. "You good?" she asked. "Yeah," I said. "I'm good." My dad found me about 10 minutes later. He came over with 2 beers, which was his version of an olive branch. He handed me one and stood next to me looking out at the lake, not quite making eye contact, the way men in my family have communicated difficult emotions for generations. "Glad you're here, bud." "Thanks, Dad." A long pause. "Listen, Jim, about the retirement thing. I know I handled that badly." "You didn't handle it at all, Dad. That's the point." He winced. I could see it even in profile. "You're right. I didn't. I should have noticed you weren't there. I should have noticed a lot of things." "Why didn't you?" He took a drink of his beer and was quiet for a while. "I don't have a good answer for that. Your mother and I, we always figured you were the strong one. You never complained, never asked for anything, never seemed like you needed us the way Scott and Paige did. And somewhere along the way, we stopped checking. That's not an excuse. I know it's not. It's just what happened. You know what's funny about that?" I said, "You assumed I didn't need you because I never asked. But I never asked because every time I tried, it got brushed aside. You trained me to stop asking, Dad. And then you punished me for not asking." He didn't say anything for a long time. When he finally spoke, his voice was rougher than usual. "When did you get so sharp?" "When I had to be." Scott appeared a little while later with his wife Megan, walking over with that confident stride I used to envy. He clapped me on the shoulder and said, "Good to see you, man. How's the electrical business? How do you know about that?" "Paige mentioned it." "Yeah, I've got 3 commercial contracts and 2 employees now. But you'd know that if you'd called me at any point in the last 6 months." Scott's smile flickered. Megan suddenly found something interesting to look at across the lawn. "Jim, I told you. The party was a miscommunication. I'm not a thing that falls through cracks, Scott. I'm your brother. You gave a speech at that party. You stood at a podium and talked about family and Dad's legacy. And you did all of that without once thinking, 'Hey, where's Jim?' That's not a crack. That's a choice." Scott looked at his shoes. For the first time in my life, my older brother didn't have a comeback. No deflection, no minimizing, no don't make it a big thing. He just stood there, and I could see the realization settling on him like dust. "I'm sorry," he said finally. And it was the first real apology I'd gotten from anyone in my family. Not, "I'm sorry you're upset." Not, "I'm sorry if it seemed that way." Just, "I'm sorry." 2 words that took 6 months to arrive. "Thank you," I said. "I mean that." The rest of the evening was strange and beautiful. I danced with Leah to an old country song while the sun finished setting over the lake. I watched my parents slow dance under the string lights that someone else had hung, and I felt something unexpected. Not anger, not resentment, just a kind of peaceful distance. Like watching something through a window. My mom found me again near the end of the night. She'd been drinking wine, and her eyes were glassy and earnest. "Jim, I need you to know something. You were never less loved. Never. I know it felt that way, and I'm so sorry. We failed you. I failed you. Thank you for saying that, Mom. Will you come to dinner on Sunday? Just dinner. No projects, no favors, just family." I looked at her for a long moment. "I'll think about it." She nodded, and I could tell it wasn't the answer she wanted, but she accepted it. And that was new. My mom accepting that she didn't get to set the terms anymore. That felt like progress. Leah and I left around 10. The drive home was quiet, but a different kind of quiet than the one after Derek's phone. This was the quiet of something settling into place. "How do you feel?" Leah asked. "Like I just took the heaviest backpack off that I've been wearing for 34 years. She reached over and took my hand. That was 8 months ago. I did go to that Sunday dinner, eventually. Not the next week, but about 3 weeks later, on my terms. It was awkward, and it was honest, and it was a start. My mom is trying. She calls me now, not to ask for help, but to ask how my day was. It's clumsy, but she's trying. My dad is slower to change, because he's Roger, and Roger processes emotions at the speed of a glacier, but he showed up at one of my job sites last month with 2 coffees and just watched me work for an hour. Didn't say much. Didn't have to. Scott and I are rebuilding. He sent me a referral last month that turned into a $10,000 contract. Didn't ask for credit. Just said, "Thought of you for this." First time in my life my brother thought of me first. Paige is still Paige. She sent me a meme yesterday. I actually responded to this one. My business is thriving. For employees, a full slate of contracts through next spring, and a reputation I built with my own 2 hands. Grant brought me in on his 3rd project. Cole tells everyone who'll listen that his former apprentice is outpacing him, and he says it with a grin that makes me think he saw this coming before I did. And Leah? I asked her to marry me last month, on the porch where she'd sat with me through the worst of it, with 2 beers and a ring and the fireflies doing their thing in the yard. She said yes before I finished the question. If you're the person in your family who never complains, who always shows up, who's fine, who's easy, who doesn't need much, let me tell you something. You deserve to be on the list. Not because you fixed the wiring or moved the couch or answered the call at midnight. Because you exist. Because you're family. Because 40 people should never be in a room celebrating your father without someone noticing the empty chair. Don't wait for them to see you. Build a life so bright they can't help it. And if they still don't look, at least you'll be standing in your own light. My name's Jim. I'm 34. I'm an electrician, a business owner, and pretty soon, a husband. And for the first time in my life, I'm not fine. I'm great.